happened the moment when you were revealed, 'cause you were a dream that just should not have been a fantasy real. You gave me this beating, baby, this rhythm inside. You made me feel good and feel nice and feel love. Gave me paradise. So shouldn't I realize you're the highest of the high? If you don't know, then I'll say it. So don't ever wonder. Shouldn't I realize? Shouldn't I realize? You're the highest of the high. Oh, if you don't know, then I'll say it. So don't ever wonder. So tell me how long. How long's gonna take until you speak, babe? 'Cause I can't live my life without you here by my side. You gave me the feeling in my life. So shouldn't I realize you're the highest of the high?
Hello. Oh. Hello. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Hi. My name is Sophia Nahlawi, author events coordinator here at the Pratt Library, and thank you for joining us. Tonight's bookseller, Ivy Bookshop, is selling Amanda Jones's book, so if you haven't purchased it already, it'll be available also at the end of the program. And so now, onwards. Tonight, I'm happy to welcome Amanda Jones to the Pratt Library to discuss her book, That Librarian. Part memoir, part manifesto, the inspiring story of a Louisiana librarian advocating for inclusivity on the front lines of our vicious culture wars. Amanda will be joined in conversation this evening by Stacy Nunn, president of the Maryland Association of School Librarians. Amanda Jones has been an educator for 23 years at the same middle school she attended as a child. She has served as president of the Louisiana Association of School Librarians and won numerous awards for her work in school libraries, including School Library Journal Librarian of the Year. A sought-after keynote speaker, Amanda is a frequent volunteer for state and national library associations, as well as a co-founder of the Livingston Parish Library Alliance and founding member of Louisiana Citizens Against Censorship. She lives in Livingston Parish, Louisiana. Stacy Nunn is a third career educator with 14 years of experience. Currently, Stacy serves as a library media specialist for Baltimore County. She is an active member of the American Library Association and a counselor at large for the 2024-2027 term. Additionally, she serves on the Scholastic Publishing Jury. She is the 2024 president of the Maryland Association of School Librarians and is on both the advocacy and conference committees. The Washington Post called That Librarian an important and engrossing story. While the book makes clear the importance of libraries, what it makes even more clear is the importance of conscientious citizens like Jones willing to stand up for their libraries. And in a starred review from Booklist, they wrote, Jones is frank, open, emotionally raw, and unwavering. What she endured is every librarian's worst nightmare, yet she perseveres, offering tips and playbooks for how readers can defend books against LGBTQIA+ topics of interest, sexual health, and more in their public libraries. A must-read in order to understand the deep and lasting impact of online smear campaigns and enduring need to stand up for books. Jones is an inspiration to everyone combating book bans, and her memoir/guidebook should be available to all to help us defend our right to read. It is my great pleasure to welcome Amanda Jones and Stacy Nunn.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out this evening. We're going to get started right away with Amanda. I hope you all had the opportunity to read the book. If not, please do so. Just in a few words, Amanda, tell me, who is Amanda Jones? What inspired you to become a librarian? And how has that moved you forward in terms of your goal setting?
Okay, so who is Amanda Jones? Stacy knows who I really am because we're friends. I small town school librarian, educator for 24 years. Very small town Louisiana, as you can probably tell from my accent. My mom and dad raised me to be a reader. My mom is a former she's a retired kindergarten teacher. My dad loves to read, and they took us to the library every week. We would pile our friends in the station wagon, and my mom would take all of us. And I became an educator because I just love my community, and I think it's a calling. Would you say it's a calling? Because you're an educator too.
Right.
It's a calling. Being an educator, and I just always, kind of knew that's what I wanted to do, and so that's what I do. And I've been fortunate to be at the same school this is my 24th year. But tell me what the second part of that question was.
And how has it moved you
How's it
forward with
moving
your
forward?
goals in the profession?
I am not just an educator, a teacher, and a librarian, but I also really believe in volunteering in your professional organizations. And so I think that when you want to do something, and I bring it back to this quote. It was I'm not going to say the quote because I'm going to mess it up, but it's by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. about when you know what your life's blueprint is and you have a solid blueprint and foundation and you know what you're going to do in life, you should do it as if God Almighty himself has sent you down to do this job and do it to the best of your ability. And that's what I try to do. I am very blessed with so many school librarian friends and librarian friends that have helped me along the way to try to be the best I can be. And so I'm very fortunate. And I think that as a school librarian, I have the best job in the world. I don't think there's a better job. I mean, I'm biased because that's what I do, but I don't think there's a better job than to be a school librarian or an educator.
Thank you. What was your inspiration to write that, Librarian? You speak a lot in the book about censorship, and even now you just touched on community activism. Tell me, what was your inspiration
for writing the book?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to tell the story about how it came to be.
Go right ahead.
Okay, because I, contrary to popular hate in my community, I'm not seeking out fame and fortune. I wouldn't have been an educator. I've been harassed for the past 2 years. It's still happening in my small town. I've been harassed. And the way this all came about was because I gave a speech as a resident of my community at the public library. Not at my school board, not where I work. As a resident of my community, I went to the public library board and gave a speech about censorship and about library policy. And my community turned on me because I was targeted by two extremists and who created these awful memes and lies about me and circulated them within the community, which kind of spiraled me into having to go seek therapy for the first time in my life. And my therapist, when you wake up one morning, when there's a targeted campaign to ruin your reputation, and they basically write that, they put the quote, the Warren Buffett quote, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. They wrote that. Like they said what they were trying to do for everyone to see. I was in intense therapy, and she said, you should write down your feelings. So I had been writing down different things. And a friend of mine said, well, you're writing all of these things down. Maybe you should write a book. And I'm not well, I guess I am a writer now, but I'm a reader. I'm a reader. I don't write well. I don't like to write. It is a task for me. So I had not taken it seriously, but in my phone on the app, a notes app, I was like, well, if I did have a chapter, what would I name it? What would I call it? And it just so happened that I don't know if you've heard of the organization We Need Diverse Books. They do an auction every year, and you can bid on these auction items for signed copies of books or author visits. And they had a 30-minute Zoom with a literary agent. And I thought, well, I know how we buy the books and what determines what we put in our collection. I know that but how does it become a book? So I bid on this auction just to learn and to raise money for help. We Need Diverse Books. Well, I won the auction, and that was the best $75 I ever spent. I ended up talking to an agent named Sarah Fisk, and we talked, and it was supposed to be for a 30-minute Zoom, but it went for an hour. And Sarah was like, wait a minute, are you that librarian that I've been reading about in the newspaper? And I was like, yeah, that's me. And Sarah said, have you ever thought about writing a book? I was like, oh, no. Well, that very evening, the Tobias Literary Agency that she works for offered to sign me. Yeah. And I was thinking in my head, well, I'm not really going to write a book, but it didn't cost anything. So, okay. So I sent it, I read over the contract. I sent it to my attorney, and she's like, looks good to me. And she didn't know. I don't know. I signed it. I said, the very next day, a senior editor from Bloomsbury Publishing emailed me and said, I heard you on the New York Times First Person podcast. Have you ever thought about writing a book? And I said, well, actually, I just got an agent and I let them talk. And they presented an offer I couldn't pass up to tell my story and get paid for it. And I realized that's not how that happens. I realize there are people that write their whole lives waiting for an agent. And I am very privileged and I'm very thankful. But I kind of think, and I don't like to talk about religion a lot because I don't like to push my religion on other people, but I believe that, God has a plan for me and this must be my plan. And so, I mean, how else, this is handed to me. So now the book was not handed. It was hard to write. It was a lot of work. But that's how the book came to be. And I just started mapping out the chapters, like what I would, and I pulled up those funny chapter names. So one of the titles early on when I was being targeted and harassed, I had tweeted out into the universe, "Are you there, Michelle? It's me, Amanda." And it was to Michelle Obama, not that she would ever see it. But are you there, Michelle? And so I was, she always says that we should take the high road. When they go low, you go high. And so my whole tweet was about how hard it is when you're being smeared and to go high. It's very hard. But it was also my ode to Judy Blume. So then I thought, because, are you there, God? It's me, Margaret. And then I thought, well, Judy needs her own separate chapter. So I had WWJD, what would Judy do? And it just kind of, and then I started getting a kick out of coming up with these titles that I thought were funny. And so it just kind of went from there. And my agent helped me shift it around. And we had a book proposal and it just became a thing. And then I signed it and then I had to write it. So.
And I can honestly say, when you shared the information, you were very humble about it. Like, hey guys, I got a deal to write a book, and that was just that. And we were like, well, we weren't surprised at all. Like the group chat wasn't surprised at all. How did the way others portray you contribute to the desire for this tell-all book?
So, to kind of tell you how my life was at the time, in 2021, I was named National School Librarian of the Year for School Library Journal. And they paraded me in front of the school board. My community was all excited because look what our librarian did, in our community. And my school board representative read a letter where she was crying and she was like, "You're one of the best things that's ever happened to our community." And I was on this high, like, this is great. And then you fast forward 1 year and they all turned their back on me. These, including my school board representative, who was a friend of mine, who said I was one of her child's favorite teachers, wouldn't answer my calls. I asked her for help, radio silence. Not only did she not help, she's actually filed bills in our legislature against librarians now, and so all I did was go to our public library and I gave a speech about censorship. And I talked about how books that are attempted, books that are, censored, banned, relocated, whatever you want to call it, they always target historically marginalized communities. It's just a fact. I quoted the Trevor Project and talked about how libraries are a safe space for kids of the LGBTQ community. I talked about how people are trying to erase history. But it was just a speech that every single librarian I know would give the same speech. It wasn't anything risque, or I didn't talk about books, but all of a sudden these men that I didn't even know, I don't even know these men. I've never interacted with them. I don't know why they chose to target me. Because I wasn't the only one that spoke that night. 20-something, 30 people spoke and said the same thing I did. But they took my picture and they were saying I was advocating for certain acts with children, that I was giving pornography and erotica to 6-year-olds. And that was circulated. And, when you even see your kindergarten teacher, the lady who taught you kindergarten, write that you're a groomer online, it takes a hit. And kids watch us as educators. Kids watch us, and we have to set a good example. And I couldn't have responded on social media. It would have done no good. And I wasn't about to get into some kind of argument on social media with any of these people. So the only thing I knew to do to clear my name was to speak to journalists and then to write this book, to let my community know. And when I wrote this book, I mean, I spilled the tea on the community, and there's a lot of, but I didn't name people. I tried to shield their identities, but to showcase the hypocrisy, because I don't want anyone to target them like they've targeted me. I didn't shield the identity of the two men that, that have been the cause of this, but I wanted people to know the truth. And the book's been out for about 2 or 3 weeks, and the community is all abuzz about it. That's all they talked about for a solid week, and it restirred up the hate. And they demanded my, they didn't say firing, expulsion from school like I was a kid. But I just wanted my story out there on public record on my terms. Thank you.
And so at what point were you able to self-reflect and move forward in a healthy way to get the information down on paper? I can recall you sharing quite a bit, being upset at sometimes it would be a big blob, and sometimes it would be just a few words. But you definitely indicated that you were upset, and how it really it took you for a turn emotionally. And so, at what point were you able to kind of like self-reflect and think about like who you really are, what you are really trying to do, and to move forward in a healthy way to get this information down on paper and share your story with the world?
So I think, so Stacy and I, we have a good mutual friend. Stacy and I are in a group chat, and we've been texting for years. We're supportive of, what are there, 5 of us, 6 of us in the?
There's 5.
5 of us. And we're from all different states. Yeah, at 5 different states, school librarians, and we're friends, and but we have a mutual friend, a DC librarian named Casey Boyd. And Casey, I think my self-reflection started back in 2020, and I write about this in the book, having met Casey and listening to her. And but when this hit, I was devastated, but my friends really came through for me. And I spent a week, when you wake up, because I had a death threat, and the death threat, and that's how the book opens up, is with the first death threat I got. And it's very explicit and talks about, click, click, we're going to come get you and all of this business. I was devastated. And I'll tell you, when I was first started being targeted, I spent several days in bed. I cried so much that my eyes swelled shut and I could not see. My sinuses swelled shut. I couldn't breathe through the top, through my nose. I spent about a week maybe in a pity party wallowing. But KC was like, all right, what are we going to do? How are we going to fight back? And I thought, well, yeah, I've got to. I can't just wallow. This is not the person I was raised to be, wallow in pity. And so with the help of other librarians from inside my state and outside the state and through my family, and I just decided to fight back. And I've since learned of this quote. There's a quote by author Samira Ahmed that says that we should use our power and our privilege for purpose. And I am very privileged. I'm a white, straight, cisgender female. The only person with more power, historically, is my white male counterpart. And there's a lot of power. And, people in my community say, oh, there's no privilege. Yes, there is privilege in being white. There is privilege in being middle class. I'm married, there's privilege in that. And I thought, if I didn't I have a platform afforded to me from being a state national librarian of the year. That's a waste of a platform if I don't speak out. I am well connected to people at, book CEOs and the editor of School Library Journal and people who are connected. So if I didn't use that to get the word out about what's happening, because this is not just happening to me, this is happening to librarians all across the United States. I am not unique. I'm just happen to be one of the loudest. This is happening to a lot of people. And I can give you a name in every state. And I thought I had to speak out. And it's otherwise, what a waste. What a waste. I don't even know if I answered your question.
You did.
I just go off.
You're doing great. And so like that kind of betrayal a little bit motivated you. Were
Yeah.
there any moments that you ever felt like you wanted to be vindictive?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All the time. I mean, but we can't. I can't. I'll give you a few examples. I don't mind sharing. So they call me bananas. They say that I'm bananas. I'm crazy. And so they use the banana emoji in all of their posts about me because they think they're funny. Because they have they have the intellect of like a 4-year-old child. So I'm vindictive in the fact that I have funnier nicknames for them that I'm not going to say. So that are inappropriate, but they're so much more intelligent than their nicknames. But they wear shirts with bananas on them. And so sometimes I'll tell you about a weak moment. So in the legislature last year, there were 9 anti-library bills in the Louisiana legislature. And they were all it's a dark money nonprofit extremist group that pushes all of this. And it's, with the help of we have an extremist supermajority of alt-right extremists in the House and Senate and a dictator governor in Louisiana. And my lawyer did say I could still refer to him as Kim Jong Landry, but his name is Jeff Landry. I had a different name, and she said, no, that goes too far, close to defamation. Stick with Kim Jong Landry. So, but he, we had 9 anti-library bills, and every day these people were posting, we're going to get Amanda, like it was like against me personally, like with how many thousands of librarians and libraries. And so I took it personal. So I helped found an organization called Louisiana Citizens Against Censorship. And collectively, we sent 44,000 emails to the legislature. We built a coalition of people from all walks of life that are for the First Amendment and freedom of speech. So yeah, one of my vindictive moments was we were in I told you about my school board member who said how wonderful and great I was. Well, I write about her in the book, and I call her Katie because I didn't want to tell her real name, but her real name is Kelly. And Representative Kelly Dickerson. And she filed a bill called HB 777 to imprison librarians who attended an American Library Association conference 2 years hard labor. See, that's how I reacted. And they were nicknaming it the Amanda Jones bill. This was my former friend. She's my representative in my district. And to be honest with you, I voted for her because the other 2 were even worse than her. That tells you. But she, I took it personally. Well, because they called it the Amanda Jones bill. I would go to school and I would teach and work all day. And then after school, I would spend hours and hours calling lobbyists, legislators, building coalitions. And so when I showed up to speak at the legislative hearing, we defeated the bill, and it was fabulous. I say we because it was a coalition of all of us. And they even said, the legislators, Republican and Democrats alike, said, we got 400 emails each against this bill and 2 for it. It's the power of the people. So being vindictive, this gets back to, have you ever felt vindictive? 3 rows of the people that hate me, that have started this mess against me, were sitting behind me in the legislature calling me names during the legislative session because I have to endure that. I mean, when we won, did I take out a banana and turn around and face them and eat it on live TV as it's streaming in the? Yes, I did. So, I mean, maybe I'm immature too, but what are they going to fault me for eating a banana? And I mean, that's about it. That's about as vindictive as I get. Does my husband want? Yeah, you should hear what my husband wants to do to these men, but we can't because it's not legal. So, but also I don't wish violence on people. People that act like that want to destroy someone else, that says more about them than it does about me.
Absolutely.
So, you have to grow a thick skin.
And it takes us right into our next question. like you talked about your child rearing. You spoke about growing up as a Christian. In what ways did that influence how you responded to some of the criticism that you received along the way?
So I grew up Southern Baptist in the Bible Belt. But I was, my mom was a Sunday school teacher, but we were raised that God is love thy neighbor as thyself, be a good Samaritan, you help those in need. That's the type of Christian that I was raised to be. So in my speech at the library board, in my original speech, what I think might have really made them mad, I said that I was raised that God is love. But as an adult, I realized that what our community means, that God is love only if you have the same political beliefs as them. They don't like that. They still don't like that. To hear them speak, oh no, wait, I'll tell you my favorite quote. So I made a shirt. It says, Amanda Jones has joined the radical leftists to burn common sense and morals on the altar of wokeism. So I made a shirt and I wear it because I'm vindictive. But I was raised, and I'm still a registered Republican. That's a whole story in and of itself. In Louisiana, I was telling Stacy this backstage, we're closed primaries. Only Republicans run. I couldn't vote if I wasn't a Republican. Have I voted that way in years on federal? And no, because I don't think these issues should be like book libraries. That should be a nonpartisan issue. It's a constitutional First Amendment free speech issue. Targeting historically marginalized communities violates the 14th Amendment. We should all be for the 14th Amendment. So I don't like where, I'll just leave it at that. I haven't voted that way. I don't think human rights should be political.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I will not be a part of any party that is trying to take away rights from anyone, whether it be the LGBTQ community, women, children, whatever, or whoever.
Let's talk a little bit about the support of your family. How were they supportive? And let me add on to that, because your mother was quite the upstander in the book. And I love that term, because, you mentioned digital citizenship, and that's kind of like what we're teaching kids right now. And so your mother was quite the upstander. Can you speak more about her strength and just the support you received from your family as a whole?
So the first few days, my parents and I did not speak because they tend to have extremist views politically that I do not have. And they initially kind of were taken aback at the hatred and thought that I must have done something. They quickly fixed that and apologized. But they couldn't because when I tell you that people were targeting and harassing me, so were like my local representative and senator, and like it was people of power too. But they quickly were like, what happened? And it was all fine. And my mother has been one of my biggest supporters this entire time. My mother this is at a public library board meeting 2 years ago, and I still go to every single one of them and still speak. I refuse to be silent. But my mom usually goes with me. And my mom, I don't even know. I get to the point, I don't remember if this is the book or not, but
This is when she kind of had her back, like, Mama Bear takes the stage.
Oh, my mom is 4'11", y'all. And so in court, because I'm suing these men and we're headed to the Louisiana Supreme Court. But the men tried to sit behind me in court so that I couldn't look at my family. And so my mom had enough of that. And she's like, oh, hell no. And my mom is like, she doesn't cuss, but she was like, and she like, is that what you're talking about? Where she squeezed herself in between the two men? She could, and her little feet couldn't even hit the floor. And she's like squeezing herself, and she's like, and coughing until they got up and left, and they were like, fine, we'll leave you. you know, but my mom is, yeah. Something that's not in the book that I'll share is that my mom, very Southern Baptist in her belief system, and my best friend is gay, and he moved away, but we've been best friends since junior high school, and he was a part of our family, and I was a part of his family, and she always accepted it. But since they retired, my parents do what retirees do and tend to watch a lot of TV, and a lot of that TV is Fox News, and some hate has been, it's when you listen to something that screaming all the time and you get angry, and so their views kind of changed. And so I was like, trying to explain to my mom, she's like, why do we have to defend, she said, these books? And well, libraries are for everyone. Everybody in the community pays taxes. Everybody deserves to see themselves on the shelves and their families represented, and so she came with me to a library board meeting, and a book was being challenged called Queerfully and Wonderfully Made, and it was a book for teenagers written by psychologists, and it was under attack. And the people in the community were saying it's pornographic, didn't have anything of the sort in it. But a trans woman got up and spoke, and when I tell you, what's that quote about speak even when you shake?
Yes.
Yeah, even when your voice shakes. And she was like, you could see her, and she was crying, but she got it out, and she said, this book can save lives. It's got resources. It can help people like me from taking our own lives. She got so upset, she ran out of the meeting after she spoke, and my mom, we got in the car that night, and my mom started crying, and she said, you know what, Amanda? She calls me Amanda Beth because that's my middle name. You know what, Amanda Beth? I think books can save lives. And I was like, Mother, where have you been for 2 years? But for the first time, she said, I see why these books are important, and it's not for me, and I wouldn't read it. But that doesn't mean it doesn't mean to be there, because it might need to be there for somebody else. So, yeah, my mom, she's, yeah, ask me again tomorrow. It might be a different. we're like, is it oil and vinegar?
So you mentioned being scared at one point. Are there still moments when you feel scared? Do you have that fear of the unknown?
Yes. So it's still happening. One of the men, the extremist, posted my address online 2 weeks ago. Yeah. He went on this weird 10-minute video blog thing about me, connecting me to like these organizations. I don't know what. It's like, it doesn't make sense. I've stopped trying to figure it out. And on his desk was a picture, a framed photo of me, because that's not concerning or anything. So as he's displaying a picture of me proudly on his desk in the video and giving my address, I don't go out anymore in my town. Don't go out to eat. I don't, I get my groceries delivered. I live in a small town with 2 red lights. So if I go out, I'm going to see everybody and their mama. That's what we say, I don't go out in my community anymore. Sometimes I have to, though. Parent nights at school where I work. But my daughter is 17 and she's in the band. She was 15 when this started. So what do you do on a Friday night? The football team plays and the band plays. So if I want to go watch my child, I have to sit in the stands while people call me pedophile and groomer. People follow me around, record me, take my picture, post awful things about me. And I live in fear that they're going to say these things in front of my child. And they have. We've gone dress shopping at the local little boutique, and my daughter realized everyone was staring and making ugly comments, and she started crying and said, can we please leave? For a speech I gave at the public library. I guess it's not just that, because then I refuse to be silent. Now I talk about everything, I'm talking about all the books. But I'm scared. I have to, every 2 months, when I go to speak at the public library board meeting, I have to travel several miles through wooded roads. I conceal carry. I sleep with a shotgun under my bed. We got video cameras installed. I have a dash cam. I am in fear for my life. And it's not, you know, oh, that's just, no, it's these people are obsessed with me, and it's very scary. And the people that are behind this are people in positions of power and a dark money nonprofit. So yeah, and they're backed, you know, by our governor. So yeah, I have a reason to be scared. They're still not going to silence me though. So.
And so you mentioned, and remember in the back room, I said I had a couple of hee moments. It says, what did it feel like when organizations made derogatory comments about you and what you stand for? You mentioned that at one point, all of these organizations started popping up like pimples on a teenager or something like that. It was, I said,
All the negative organizations?
all the negative, like, how did that feel for you? And you've already mentioned that is continuing, but how did that?
Yeah, it's like a virus, like a stomach virus.
Mhm.
And they all catch it and they all just want to regurgitate bleh, everything, hate, bleh, bleh, all over the place. That's what, you know. Moms for Liberty tweeted I was a groomer.
Mhm.
The National Moms for Liberty that has what, million or so followers. Chaya Rychik lives at TikTok, who, you know, tweeted about me.
Mhm.
But you know, it's not, those don't bother me as much as the local people.
Mhm.
The person I taught down the hall from for 10
Mhm.
years, my child's best friend's father saying, because at one point they were selling mugs that had my face lasered into it that said Librarian tears. They sold them. And my child, her best friend's dad said, I got to get me one of those. How do I explain that to my child? Your best friend's dad is a-hole? Like, I can't say, you know?
Right.
It's, you know, it's harder
Mhm.
when it's people you know and people you expect better of. So it's the home people that are the most upsetting.
So you've answered the next few questions. So let's talk a little bit about the people who actually supported you.
Yes. I'll tell you, it's like, first of all, the school librarians from the get-go had my back. Stacy and the group chat and all of them. And then school librarians across the country, and not just school librarians, public and academic librarians. The president of the American Library Association at the time called me personally. I didn't know her. Called me personally to check on me. I don't even know if she got my cell phone number. I don't care because I needed to hear it. You know, like she was so supportive of me. What can I do to help? All of the past, current, and the future at the time, American Association of School Librarians presidents, all four of them called me personally. What do you need? Students, I'm a 24-year educator. When I started teaching, you know, I taught 13 and 14-year-olds at the time. So they're in their mid-30s now. And a lot of those students, former students in their late 20s, early 30s, reached out to me. And I say this often, that it's kind of like my It's a Wonderful Life moment, that even though there's been such hate, the love and people saying, you made a difference to me. I had, and I talk about some of them in the book. I will say my Gen Z army came out in full force when those kids that are, and they're not kids, they're in the early 20s. They started trying to, on social media, like, you don't talk about my teacher, you know, but I've had, you know, I had a student, and I write about this student named Sean, who lived in Minnesota, that heard me on NPR, found me on Facebook and said, Miss Jones, I heard you on NPR today. I recognize your voice immediately. I know you don't remember me, but my name is Sean and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I wrote back, well, yes, Sean, I remember you. You were in fourth hour. I remember where you sat. 2 years prior to that, I taught your brother Dylan. I remember where he sat. He was in my sixth hour. They're in their late 20s, early 30s. Because when they're your kids for life. And he said, remember we did that lesson, and remember we did this, and y'all, that outshines every
Right.
death threat. You know, that's yeah. And I'll say, Sean's in Minnesota. He's still in Minnesota, and I'm so proud of him. He's married and he has a really great job. His brother came to my book launch. His brother went to Rutgers and got his master's in education and is now teaching in Baton Rouge, and came to my book launch. And he said, and I was Miss McKee then, that was my maiden name. Miss McKee, remember me? And I'm like, yes. I said, I even wrote about it in my book when your brother reached out to me. Because his mom came too. And she's like, you know, I'm so thankful that you taught my boys. And you just can't take that away from me. No matter how hateful these people are, all they have is their hate. I have thousands. I counted it up one day. I've taught over 8,000 students. Yeah. And if at least, you know, one of them I changed, that's more than these people have. They don't have that. I feel sorry for them. So, I don't know.
And so you've offered a lot of support to students. You taught a lot of students. And I know like you have a lot of colleagues who actually, you really inspire them. Do you find that people reach out to you often?
Yes. You know, because we've known each other for years, you know, I had so many people that I learned from when I was starting out as a school librarian. So like I tried to turn around and offer it back to everybody else. And I think we should all lift each other up, you know, like we should all help each other. So if Stacy tells me she wants to, you know, maybe join this or run for this or whatever, I'm going to be there for her. And so I try to, because people did that for me, and I try to turn it around and I try to give back. And I don't know that I'll ever be able to repay everyone that's given me so much though, but I'll always try. The school librarian world is, and the librarian world in general is just fiercely loyal. But I also learned in this past 2 years that we're kind of badasses. So.
Yeah, and we share a lot. I mean, I think that's just
Yeah.
the world of being an educator in general. However, we do share a lot. So I have a few more things because we're going to run out of time, and we have some Q&A coming up. You mentioned a lot about social media. So I have a few. I'm going to give you some starter sentences and ask you to finish them.
Okay.
Ready? Social media has been
A blessing and a curse. You can use it to push false information and hate, or you can use it like what I've been doing to push the truth about libraries and to build coalitions to combat this.
absolute. Here's another one. Standing up for censorship has been
The right thing to do, and I wouldn't change a thing about it.
And if I had an opportunity to start over, I would change.
Not a thing. Yeah, I wouldn't change anything. I mean, don't get me wrong, it sucked. I don't want to go through that again. I don't want to go through that again. But I wouldn't have changed it in order to escape what happened to me. I wouldn't have changed anything. So yeah.
The book itself is definitely a wonderful tell-all. I think that the way you told your story, as well as there are parts that every school librarian can relate to at some point in time in there. I think that it's inspirational. I think you touch on emotional issues that several librarians have felt over time. But I also think that people in our world, and hopefully in the world in general, just respect you in a different way because you decided to step out and be courageous and brave. So in closing, my last question is, who is Amanda Jones?
Oh, I'm looking for the word. Oh, accomplice. Because I'm not, I'm going to be accomplice is that the right word? I'm trying to think. Somebody said it. It's not an activist. It's not an advocate. you go even farther and you become an accomplice in the good trouble, you know? So that's what I'm trying to be for the greater good, you know?
Excellent. And I'll tell you, it wasn't hard at all. Like, I was online searching these questions and I'm like, screw this. I just started typing because I had read the book and I knew who you were, but I wanted to give the audience information, like questions that you all may have. I wanted some of those questions to be answered because I've heard this stuff from you. But the book really opened my eyes and inspired me, and just gave me some reinforcement on executive functioning, because my goodness, like all the things you endured throughout the book, the way you shared the information, the way that you were, there were a lot of vulnerable moments there. And I just wanted to say thank you for that. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. I kind of bared it all there. I even talk about how I'm very uncomfortable talking about race, but we have to, you know, and I talked about my family and the way I grew up and my views now, and it's uncomfortable, but we have to be uncomfortable to move, you know, learn and grow. And so the book is, you know, it's my story. It's what happened to me, but it also touches on what's happening to several librarians across the country. It talks about, it explains libraries to people that don't understand some of the policies that we already have to protect children. And then it talks about hate and hate rhetoric and politicians and why this is happening. And then it ends on a good note. With me returning, I took a medical leave of absence, and so the book ends where I'm returning back to school, which was last year, and it gives people several tips on what to see if it's happening in their community or how to help others, that I hope people take away from it that aren't, you know, librarians, that are moms, dads, grandparents, aunts, uncles, citizens who love libraries and who love reading and want to protect our First Amendment.
Thank you, Amanda.
And so now it's time for our audience to ask some questions. So if you have a question, you can come to the mic I am currently at, and the mic on the far side of the auditorium where my colleague is at, and we will go one after another until the top of the hour. So don't be shy.
I have also attended multiple ALA, AASL functions that will lock us up together, okay?
Yes.
Thank you for speaking today and for all you have done. Have you figured out, because you said many people talked at that original meeting, why you were targeted specifically? It was just you were the most uppity woman there? Was it... You know, have you figured that out?
I mean, I have my suspicions. I went dressed in like a suit type. I was dressed up more than everybody else. I did say that I was the 2021 National School Librarian of the Year, and that I was at the time the current president of the Louisiana Association of School Librarians, because I wanted the people to know that when I was talking policy, that I knew what I was talking about. And I think what they thought would happen was that they would target the most outspoken, or who they thought would be the most outspoken, and that if they could silence me, they could silence everyone. And it did work, because when they didn't silence me, but they scared everybody, and nobody went to the next couple of meetings. They were scared. But they messed with the wrong one, and they were not prepared. So they did not choose their victim very wisely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for speaking today. This has been a really educational experience. My question would be phrased in two different ways. The decision to stay at your school, at your house, I'm sure was a very hard decision to make, but I'm curious, why did you choose to stay? Or more specifically, why did you choose to not leave?
It was not hard for me, and I never gave it a second thought, because I've lived there my entire life, and it's my town, and I'm not a quitter. But it's my town, and I'll be damned if they're going to run me out of my own town. But everybody asks me that. Everybody does. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Kristen. I'm a reporter with the Baltimore Banner, and I have covered a lot of the book banning happening in a county not too far away from here, Carroll County. I believe you mentioned utilizing your local news coverage, and I'm wondering if you could talk about what that coverage was like and if you think it helped or hurt.
It depends on who's covering it, because we had some of the local television reporters. It was some of the laziest reporting I've ever seen in my life. And they just told one side and they sensationalized it. But you had the print reporters that were really doing the work, and they were linking to sources and agendas, and this is what really happened. So that was great. But the people in my community they looked at what they could see, which was not. And I refused to speak to the television media, but I spoke to every print reporter. But you have to put it on public record. People are going to read about this in like 20, 30, 50 years. I want to document what we did, So print all the way for me.
Hi, Amanda. My name is Denise. And first I want to say, as you're my Christian sister, and Joshua 1:9 tells you to be strong and courageous. And I just want to encourage you to continue to use God's grace and God's power to support your effort in your book. Secondly, I've raised two daughters, beautiful daughters. They're 24 and 29 now, and they were raised in this library. Both had library cards at the age of 3. So I love educators and libraries, and they were both strong readers. And, I had a dream for my girls for it to come to fruition. The oldest one, 29, she works for Microsoft, and the other one just graduated from Albright College on Mother's Day this year. And the oldest one received a master's from Carnegie Mellon University. So all from the librarians, the awesome librarians that we met along the way, and the books that I encouraged them to read as a mother. My third question is in regards to your daughter, in regards to all of this craziness and madness, because I'm kind of going through something similar at this particular time. The peer pressure that was placed on her. I'm just curious, as you can speak on how did it create division? Because when you're in high school, you say she's 17, and you're in high school, and that's where you gain it the most. I mean, I went through some things with my girls, but we was able to trust God in the situation. But I'm just curious as to, did it create any division in your household, or in regards to her other classmates and attacking her because of what's going on with you? And do she support your book?
So that's a good question, because I think had my child been targeted too, I would have had to have taken a step back for her. The thing about my daughter is, I mentioned earlier that she's in band. And I don't know how school bands are around here, but in Louisiana, they're like tight-knit families. And I'll say this, the community was spewing a lot of hate, but the kids are okay. The kids are more inclusive and empathetic people. And the kids that tend to be in the band in our community are there's a lot of members of the communities that I was trying to protect. So they love me. So she received love. And her principal, the good thing about living in a community where you know everybody, her principal, the people, like, they taught me, they knew me, they were good people that watched out for her. Had she been bullied by her own peers, no, I might not be as outspoken today. But no, she's been fine. She could care less actually about my book. She went to the book launch and was like, "Can we go now?" So she's 17. So, Yeah, she's just texting me, when are you gonna be home? Like, I need some money. Like, I'm like, your dad's right next to you. I'm like, but yeah, no,
Praise
she's
God.
fine. She's fine. Yes, thank you.
Hi, how are you? I'm Stephanie. I'm a library media specialist in Baltimore County. This is my 29th year in education, 7th year in the library. I have been part of several recommendation book selection committees, and I think as in Maryland, we feel like we are safe, or a little more safe than other states. But I see that, each year it gets a little closer to Texas, to Louisiana, to Florida, because there's these organizations that's really trying to change the narrative of the freedom to read. So my question is, before it gets to that point where we're at, at Louisiana, we're in Florida, we're in Texas, where the laws are threatening our lives and threatening our jobs and threatening our livelihoods, what can we do now so that we are protecting ourselves, knowing that it is at a place where it's happening, it's coming?
Oh, it's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming.
And so what do we
Yeah.
do as a state that's pretty liberal, that when we do have these review committees, we're actually winning and we're actually, allowing these books to stay. Maybe
But it
they
can change.
Yeah.
Like,
And
yeah.
so just.
That's a really good question. And I talk a lot, so I write a lot in my book about building an alliance, a public library or a school or like a library alliance in your county, and start getting out the good word about libraries and pushing that. But having a coalition already built so that when it does arise, you already have steps, like you've already built you've gotten 9, 10 parents, community members together that says, if this happens, we're going to do this. And you formulate a plan before it happens. I just wrote an essay for Time Magazine about 3 weeks ago, that these attacks on our libraries are really going to hinge on this presidential election. Because you'll see we have one and I don't like to get too political, but it's become a political issue. We have one candidate who is getting up at rallies and spewing that they're trying to put sexually explicit material in the toddler libraries, which is not a thing that anyone is doing. And then you have another vice presidential candidate who signed anti-book banning laws into his state as governor. This election is important, and we have to vote, because if one person gets in, it's going to be like this for libraries for another long time.
And I just want to say that Stacy is one of our advocates. So
isn't she the best?
She's in a group chat with me too. So,
yes. She's the best. She really is.
So we've got time for 2 last questions. I'm going to let the first one go right now.
I did have 2 questions, but one of my questions you just answered. As you know, several of the major trade publishers just sued and won court cases against school districts in Florida. Do you see that happening? And what role do you think major trade publishers can play in preventing censorship in both public and school libraries?
It's very important that because for a while there it was just Penguin Random House. And a friend of mine even talked about writing an article called "Send in the Cavalry." Like, when are the rest of you going to join? Like, come on now. But I'm happy to see that in Florida and Texas, all the top 5 have joined now, including my own public. I'm so thankful. And so, because the grassroots alliances that we build, they're great and all at the local level, but we have no money. We cannot file these lawsuits. So there was a major win in Florida this week. And then coming up in 2 weeks, or next week, September 24th, there's a huge case called Leila Little Green versus Lano, Texas. It's going to be in the 5th Circuit, it's a Texas court case, but it's happening in New Orleans in the 5th Circuit. That's going to determine, it's going to be huge for censorship in public libraries. It's in public. It's going to take these big corporations, these big publishing companies, to put their money behind their authors and their books and the citizens in the libraries. I also wish, though, that the library supply companies would join in, because if there's no libraries, who are they going to supply to? So we're working on that, though.
Thanks, Amanda, for writing your book. I think you just sort of answered my, lead into my next question, because, we talked about like the censorship for like school libraries, and it's gone down to the public libraries. And what's the next step? Whether it's like the publishing houses, et cetera. So I think that's exactly where we're going. And we talk about Project 2025, and it's laid out all in there. And so I think people really need to educate themselves on this. So thank you so much for what you're doing.
You're welcome. Yeah, they did go after booksellers in Texas with legislation. They went after booksellers, bookstores. They've gone after was it Barnes and Noble, where they went after a Sarah J. Maas book, and
They even like did a little trespass on
Yeah.
schools and like interviewed and
yeah,
people's
Granbury,
face.
Texas.
Yes.
They they're sneaking into libraries and I mention Project 2025 all the time in my community, and they're like, "Oh, that's not real." And I'm like, "It's happening right now." Like, what do you mean it's not real? It's happening right now. The libraries are mentioned on page 5, and what they're doing is what they're doing, and it's they won't stop. And the ultimate goal is to defund schools and libraries and privatize them. It goes back to authoritarian power, pushing Christian nationalism. And back in the position of who has power, who doesn't, who has the money. And if we don't stop it, we're going to lose our schools and libraries. So yeah, but is that?
Please join me in thanking tonight's moderator, Stacey Nunn. And our author, Amanda Jones. And so now all of you are going to buy books if you haven't already. Wow. Or get your book signed. The author will be outside in another couple minutes, and you will join me outside, lining up right outside the auditorium to get your book signed. Thank you for joining us.